Welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast. My name's Ryan.
And I'm Rosie.
How are you doing tonight, Rosie?
I'm good. I just got my new velvet tracksuit in the mail.
That's real velvet?
Well, I mean,
I don't know what that is.
Anyways, it's a good day.
Yeah, this is our second day in a row recording because yesterday we recorded a Patreon episode.
I did.
And I didn't edit it at all.
I thought you did like twice.
Raw. Well, I cut out a long gap where I was just like, and then stared for a while.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, it's unedited. You get to hear a couple of our little oopsie-daisies and conflict resolution.
Yes, so that is our episode, premium number 24, Belle Gunness. And it's super laid-back discussion between me and Ryan. That's what's fun about Patreon is I feel like we just can kind of cut loose a little bit.
Well, yeah, because we talk about older cases that aren't quite as sensitive, so.
Mm-hmm. And it was quite a thrill, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Were you surprised by the story?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. I couldn't believe that it just kept going.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. An emotional roller coaster, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, what have you got for us tonight, Rosie?
Well, tonight we are going to talk about Anastasia Kriégel. Anastasia was born on February 18th, 2004. At only 2 years old, she was adopted from an orphanage in Novokuznetsk, in a city in western Serbia, Russia.
Okay, so this is a relatively recent, a lot more recent than the one we talked about last night.
Yes, correct.
Case.
The year was 2006 when she was adopted, and after only meeting her once, a couple knew that Anna was going to be their daughter and brought her home. The couple's names were Geraldine and Patrick Kriégel. And that's how you pronounce his name, but I know I'm going to forget, so I'm just going to call him Patrick for the sake of my sanity.
All right.
They welcomed her with open arms. They made a loving home for her in Leixlip, Ireland. So I didn't know this, and I'm going to let everybody else know that Leixlip isn't too far from Dublin, Ireland, just to help visualize where this is.
How big is Ireland across? Like it's not that big, is it?
No, it's not. I don't know the mileage or the acreage.
Miles. Let's see. Okay, 32,000 square miles. But it's 170 miles wide, 302 miles long.
Got it. Both Geraldine and Patrick had wanted children for a very long time. So they tried to give Anna the world. They were just so excited to have her come into their family. And to announce that they were adopting a little girl from Russia to their friends and family, they put a picture of Anna in a little Russian nesting doll as a surprise and gave them to their friends and family to open. So super sweet.
Cute.
The whole family adored her. They encouraged Anna to keep her Russian roots and her traditions. She was known as being a loud child, but with a very bright personality. Anna was very sensitive as a kid. She was very loving. She loved to dance. In fact, she'd spend hours in front of a mirror perfecting her moves. She was part of a local dance group, and she also liked to make little YouTube videos.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I suppose if she was born in 2004 or adopted in 2004.
2006.
YouTube came out in 2006?
2006 is when she was adopted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so later on in life, she would start making the YouTube videos, but ever since she was like a little girl, she loved to dance. She was also a very strong swimmer. She swam competitively. In fact, her mom called her a dolphin trapped in a girl's body.
Uh-huh.
So
now I'm starting to worry about why we're talking about this, though.
Well, Anna was also extremely talented musically, which I knew that you would appreciate.
Oh, cool.
She learned how to play the violin and the piano.
Did she put any of this on YouTube?
I think she was more focused on her dance, especially when she was a teenager, you know?
Are there still videos up?
Not that I can find.
Okay.
Anna struggled academically and socially in primary school. So primary school in Ireland is for children between 4 and 12, though it isn't required until age 6, so like elementary school here in the States. Most likely, her struggling was due to only speaking in Russian for the first 2 years of her life. So she was just kind of behind because of that. And just being in the orphanage for 2 years in general, it's so crucial when you're a child or a baby, you know. So she had a little bit of a hard time catching up academically and speaking English. During her childhood, Anna had to go through a complicated surgery to remove a tumor from the inside of her right ear.
What?
Yeah.
How old was she?
I couldn't find the exact age.
Okay.
I think she's like in the range of like 8 to 10.
Was it cancerous or sort of random tumor?
It was a tumor that was creating some visual and hearing loss.
Oh,
I don't think it was cancerous, but more it was making more problems.
gotcha.
So after the procedure, kids at school really started taunting her. They were calling her deformed. She had lost some of her hearing in her right ear, even after the surgery, and part of the ear itself, and some scarring on top of that. So she was a target for bullying right off the bat. And she also suffered from short-term memory loss after the surgery.
Oh, that's really hard for a young girl
Right.
to deal with.
So with that, she was also being bullied for being adopted. People or kids were taunting her about not having real parents. You know how kids can be just cruel.
Yeah, and part of it's because they don't know any better. But yeah, they can be very cruel.
So when Anna entered secondary school, which is similar to middle school in the US, she started to really struggle socially. In fact, primary school teachers were worried about her. They didn't know how she would do going to this school because of how immature she was and how she was reacting to the bullying in primary school. But in the start of secondary school, she was asked to write a paragraph on her hopes and dreams for the future. And this is what she wrote. My hopes for the future. I hoped I would get into secondary school, and I did. So that's one goal down. My second hope is to go to Paris University like my dad, the hardest one to get into. And when I come home from Paris, I would like to get a dog. I would like to get married too. I'm not sure if I want any babies. Well, not yet anyway. I hope I have a good life, and I hope everyone will be nice. So this is just a nice example, for me anyways, to see what kind of kid she was. She was really innocent and sweet.
She hopes everyone will be nice.
I know.
That's the basic what you can ask for.
Right. So let's fast forward a little bit to age 13. Anna's already 5 foot and 8 inches. So puberty hit her fast and way faster than the other girls around her. She was a beautiful girl. She's tall. She looked like an adult, and a lot of people mistook her for being 18.
How old was she?
13.
Oh, wow. So kind of like you.
Yeah, kind of like me. Even though Anna looked so mature, her family said that Anna was very young mentally, more than the average 13-year-old. So that made her different from the other kids at school and was, again, an easy target for bullies.
And this was due to starting education later and the tumor.
Well, and just looking different. I mean, when you are hitting puberty so fast and nobody else around you is.
But I mean, that wasn't her only disadvantage. She already
Right.
had some stuff to deal with when she was younger that set her back a little bit.
Right. So Anna really struggled to make friends at this time. As a young teenager, she really craved friendship. But Anna's pretty much her only friends were her younger cousins. Her best friend was one of them. Other than family, though, she was known to be a real loner as a young teen. Her parents tried to encourage her and help her to make friends, knowing how important it was to have a solid friend group at such a fragile time in her life. Anna started looking for friendship online at age 14. She was using platforms like Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, and in addition to her dance videos, she started creating content for like hair and makeup tips and fashion. But the bullying just seemed to get worse online. It got to a point it was so bad that one person was evil enough to simply comment, "I'd have you executed."
What?
On one of her videos.
Ugh. I know sometimes it can be annoying, how YouTube censors stuff, but like in situations like this, I totally think that shouldn't have even been allowed to be posted.
Right. I totally
Because that's
agree.
real hate speech. That's not, that's not just disagreeing with someone. That's actually like a threat, pretty much.
Yeah. Anna was getting bullied at school, around her neighborhood, and online. She was so lonely at this point that she started making fake accounts and joining in on the cyberbullying on herself.
What?
Yeah. She was just so desperate to fit in any way that she could.
Desperate for some form of community.
Yeah.
Like, even if she was the target, she wanted, like, to have a community with other people.
Yeah.
That badly.
It just shows, like, how crucial this was getting. Critical, sorry. Geraldine eventually had Anna hand over all of her devices and passwords for her social media platforms. She went over them almost every night, trying to monitor what was going on in her daughter's life. Now, we know that any teenager would be furious at this, but Geraldine tried and pleaded with Anna that she was just trying to help her and just trying to make sure she knew what was going on in her life.
Yeah.
Geraldine, go ahead.
In some situations, parents do need to put the foot down. Like, if their child could be in real danger, like,
right,
that's the time to step in.
Her mother found comment after comment saying things like Anna was a slut, she was too tall, they were making fun of her for being adopted, and more, these insults started getting more sexual, more explicit sexually. So Geraldine took screenshots of these comments, of the cyberbullying, and showed them to the school board. But nothing really happened.
So were these comments from people that knew her in real life?
It was a mixture of both.
From school? Ugh, I don't know what I would do if I was Geraldine. Like,
I know.
this would be such a stressful and difficult situation to deal with.
Mm-hmm. It sounds so overwhelming, especially online.
Yeah.
Like, how do you handle it?
This is one of the reasons that I don't want to have kids.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know how I would handle stuff like this.
Well, on Halloween night, Anna was walking home from a volunteer job when she was surrounded by 4 boys. These boys started taunting her, and one relentlessly kept on asking for sex. Anna refused, and she was trying to keep walking home.
How old was she at this point?
14. One of the boys slapped her on the backside as she left. When Anna told her parents about what had happened, they went to the Gardaí. And that's an Irish term for what we are familiar with as police. Mm-hmm. The boy was held responsible for his actions, but again, this didn't change anything. The bullying didn't get any better.
I haven't heard that term, Gardaí.
Yeah,
before.
I'm going to be using that term throughout.
Okay. But apparently the consequences weren't very significant if this didn't affect anything.
Right. After this, Geraldine and Patrick started driving Anna to and from school almost daily, making sure that she got there safely. So at this point, they're actually worried about her physical safety and mentally. They could see that she was struggling mentally and that she was starting to self-harm. So in 2018, Geraldine and Patrick reached out for some help from a youth counseling center. Anna started regularly attending counseling sessions and hoped that she would gain some self-confidence and some coping skills for what was happening in her life.
That's good.
On May 13th, the Kriégels had a family get-together, and Anna was in good spirits. She was excited to have her cousins over. Anna and her cousins left the adults. They went to make YouTube videos and goof around. And while they were up in Anna's room, the adults stayed in the kitchen and living room area, enjoying a few drinks and talking. When the family left, Anna got ready for bed, and she reminded her mom to write her a note for school the next day. She was going to need to leave school early to attend one of her counseling sessions. She said goodnight to her parents and was sleeping around 10 p.m.
I'm afraid of where this is heading now, because making a pretty average night sounds significant.
Mm-hmm. Well, the next day, everything's going to change. On May 14th, Geraldine remembers having to drag Anna out of bed to get ready for school. Anna was having a hard time waking up, as many typical teens do. Anna got dressed.
I still do.
Yeah, really. You do. Anna got dressed, she grabbed some breakfast, and she said goodbye to her mom. With her note in hand, she went to class. Now, around 1:30 p.m., Anna left school. She got some lunch from her house, and she went to her counseling session. About 4 p.m., she started walking back home. On her way to the house, she tried calling her mom, but Geraldine was busy in a work meeting and texted Anna that she couldn't talk at the moment. So Anna got home. She greeted her dad, who was enjoying the garden. Things were going on very usually. She grabbed some snacks from the kitchen and went up to her room to get started on her homework. Now, around 5 p.m., there was a knock on the door. Patrick answered it and was surprised to see a teenage boy from Anna's school there. The boy asked if Anna was home and he wanted to talk to her. So Patrick was really taken back. Obviously, this was not in the norm for his daughter. He was very well aware of the fact that her only friends were her cousins. So Patrick called for Anna and just watched from a distance what was going on. And he said that the two were talking kind of quietly by the front door. Patrick wasn't sure what they were saying, but he was in a mix between excitement and nervousness about the exchange.
Yeah, he's probably like, is this boy into her or interested in her, like in a good way?
Right. So Anna turned to her father and asked him if she could go out. Patrick replied, "Don't you have some studying to do?" Anna told him she would do it right when she got back home. She promised. Reluctantly, Patrick let her go. Anna ran past her father to grab a black hoodie from her room and walked past her dad with a huge smile on her face.
So she's like really excited for this.
Right. She then followed the boy down the street. Now, Patrick was so shocked, right? He totally forgot to ask her where she was going to be. So he went back to the front door, opens it, and is about to yell for her, but realizes that they're just like way too far down the street to yell for her without making a scene.
Mm-hmm.
But he did notice that as they were walking, even though it was pretty far away, it didn't seem like they were talking to each other. Like they were just walking in silence, and the boy was walking ahead of her. So it was really strange. Now, Geraldine tried calling Anna back while she was on her way home from work on the train. Anna didn't answer, but she wasn't that worried. At 5:20, Geraldine got home, expecting Anna to be there, and asked her husband where she was. Patrick replied that she had gone out with a boy 20 minutes earlier, but she'd be back in a little while. Geraldine was instantly sick to her stomach. She knew that this was extremely odd, and she texted Anna, "Home now." Now, Anna was very diligent about texting or calling her parents back no matter what, even if she was in trouble or mad at them. So when Anna didn't respond after a few minutes, Geraldine got even more worried. She texted her again, "Answer me now, or I'm going to call the Gardaí." Anna didn't reply. Geraldine immediately started looking around the neighborhood for her daughter. She came back home. She tried to calm down, had some dinner with Patrick, and then they decided to try to find the boy who was at their door on Facebook. Not a bad idea. Eventually, Patrick was able to spot the boy, who we will be referring to from now on as Boy B.
B?
Right.
So there's a boy A?
There's a boy A. Relieved to have a name to work with, they tried to find his home address, but they couldn't. Geraldine and Patrick went to their friend, who was a retired private investigator, for some wisdom on what to do next. The friend told them to go to the authorities right away. So at this point, it has been 4 hours since Patrick last saw Anna. Anastasia Kriégel was reported missing around 9 p.m. that night. They gave the Gardaí the boy's name and what had happened. The police didn't really take the call that seriously at first. You know how it is. They usually don't, because kids run away. They just want to have some time alone, and then they come wandering back.
And they get a lot of these calls.
Right. But Geraldine pleaded with them that this was extremely out of the ordinary for their daughter. The Gardaí went to the boys' home. At this point, again, they didn't think anything of it. They were just doing it because of the call. And Boy B's mother answered the door. With his mother protectively standing in front of him, Boy B told the Gardaí that he and Anna walked to the park together, and then he went home shortly after. So he doesn't know what happened.
Well, okay. So why did you go get her at her house just for that?
Well, the next day, Geraldine and Patrick started searching again for their Anna. The Gardaí decided to go back to Boy B's home again, kind of grill him some more because of what you said. That's a weird story.
Well, and at this point, she hasn't come home. It's the next day.
Yeah.
It's obvious things are seriously wrong now.
So they asked him again, what was he doing with Anna the day before? And they got a slightly different story this time. Boy B told them that his friend Boy A had asked him to get Anna for him and to bring Anna to the park. Now, apparently, Anna had a really big crush on Boy A, and she really wanted to have a relationship with him. But Boy A wanted to let her know it was never going to happen in person. So the park that we're talking about is called St. Catherine's Park. It's 200 acres large, so it's like not your normal little
It's not just
park.
a little square of land.
It has a lot of trails, little nooks and crannies, some woodlands, grasslands.
So is it more like kind of a state park or national park type of vibe?
I guess so. I guess I was thinking more of like the really big park in New York.
Oh, Central Park?
Kind of like that. That's what I got from the pictures anyway.
That makes sense.
It's about a 30-minute walk from Anna's home, too, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So the Gardaí decided it was time to visit this Boy A, and the story was quite a bit different from Boy B's. Boy A said that he randomly saw Anna in the park, and while he was there with her, he mentioned to her that he didn't want to be in a relationship with her, but he let her down really gently, and then he had to go do his chores at home. So at first, he never even mentioned that Boy B was there. So that was very suspicious. The Gardaí brought Boy A to the park and told him to bring the Gardaí where he saw Anna.
Last?
So, yeah. As Boy A showed them around, the Gardaí recorded the locations. The Gardaí used the CCTV, which is a security system used by the Republic of Ireland, to check if it was adding up.
Closed circuit television.
Yeah.
What it is.
But it wasn't matching up with the footage. It did take a while for them to look over this footage. It was over 700 hours of footage to comb through.
Oh, combined.
So they were doing this while they were trying to get these stories. The Gardaí was getting a lot of tips about Anna's whereabouts. Someone even believed to have seen her at the airport. So that kind of threw them off too.
It's like you want tips, but there are so many that are not good tips that it's just...
Right.
It's unfortunate that it can possibly waste time.
So next, the Gardaí decided to have Boy A and Boy B both go to the park and again show them where they had seen Anna. The boys walked towards a BMX track that was in the park, and the Gardaí noticed that they looked at each other with a really strange expression on their face. The Gardaí also noticed that Boy A had a limp, and he was holding his arm as if it was in pain. So that wasn't right. They brought the boys back to the station, and they decided they needed to get some formal statements. While the Gardaí gathered the information for the statements, they asked Boy A why he was limping.
Did they have some kind of accident?
Right? He told them that after he saw Anna and was on his way home to get those chores done, he was attacked by two older men who seemed to be around the ages of 19 or 20.
How'd this never come up before?
Right? He went on to tell a very detailed story about how they overpowered him at first, but eventually he fought them off and got away. He said, quote, "One grabbed me by the shoulder and pulled me down to the ground. After a minute, I managed to kick one in the head, and then they both ran off." Bizarre.
Yeah.
Boy A also mentions that these two guys didn't want to steal anything from him or want his money, but they just wanted to beat up a random person, apparently.
Okay.
In the following couple days, volunteers spent their time trying to look for Anna within the park. Within the 200 acres, there was an abandoned 19th century farmhouse that went by the name the Glenwood House. It was abandoned after a house fire, and it was usually occupied by teenagers at night looking for a good time, looking for an empty place to hang out.
Oh.
On May 17th, 2018, 3 days after Anna went missing, a search team decided to check the house. As they went inside, the only form of light was from a punch in a wall next to some boarded up windows. The team found what looked to be a mannequin in one of the rooms, but upon further examination, they realized it was the body of a young woman. She was naked with only her socks on. She had blue tape around her neck, and 3 of her fingers were stuck under the tape, showing signs of a struggle trying to remove it. The floor under her was covered in blood, and they identified the body as Anna Kriégel. Her clothes were found scattered around the house, and the Gardaí also found a plank of wood or a large stick, depending on where you find the story, and a cement block with Anna's blood and DNA on them. Her body was covered with wounds. There were over 50 sites of injury. Her official cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and neck, and there was obvious evidence that she had been raped. So immediately, the boys were suspected of murder from this point on.
Oh, yeah.
And again, the boy B who knocked on her door was 13. Was a classmate or a schoolmate.
Do you know how old boy A was?
Also 13.
Oh my gosh. This is like the Scream murders type of situation with the age.
On May 23rd, the Gardaí contacted the boys' parents and told them their children would be arrested the next day. They gave them the notice so they could prepare themselves and the children of what was about to come.
That was nice of them to give them a heads up.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine being the parents of those kids?
No.
And hearing that? Like, you would never, ever imagine your kid could do something like this.
Right. I can't.
Or that it would happen to your kid.
On May 24th, a week after finding Anna, the 13-year-old boys were arrested on the suspicion of murder. They were questioned and their homes were raided. The Gardaí found a backpack in boy A's room that contained knee pads, gloves, shin guards, a hair tie, and a zombie mask. Now, this mask was talked about in several interviews. It was a really, really creepy, disgusting mask. It was like a half mask with pointed teeth and cut out eyes and had painted blood dripping from it, and both his DNA and Anna's blood would be on this mask. They also found Anna's blood on the inside and the outside of the backpack, as well as boy A's shoes. Boy A's semen was found on Anna's black hoodie. So the evidence was overwhelming. The Gardaí also found phone searches on his phone, like abandoned places in Lucan, which is where the park was, how to kill somebody, just the typical things you would find on the phone of somebody who was going to do that.
This is why it's so dangerous for kids to be allowed to continuously bully the same person, because this entire stigma formed in the school against Anna. She was looked at as less than human because literally everyone piled on her, and they looked at her differently because of that.
Now,
So scary.
Boy A's family remembers their son being nervous and shaken up the night of her disappearance. And they even remember seeing blood on his clothes. But he had that story of being attacked on his way home from the park. Eventually, he did confess to murdering Anna, but he still denies sexually assaulting her, even though his semen was found on the crime scene. Now, the Gardaí found no physical evidence of Boy B on Anna or in the abandoned house. Instead, they had circumstantial evidence after interviewing him several times.
That he was still there?
Well, he was a part of it, but just not in the part of physically tormenting her. So eventually Boy B told the truth that he went into the house with Boy A and Anna. At first he said he witnessed the murder but didn't participate in any way. But then he started confessing that Boy A had told him about his plan. He knew what was happening and he brought Anna to him. He knew that Boy A wanted to kill her. There was even a conversation that was brought up from a month earlier where Boy A said, "Hey, do you want to kill someone?" And Boy B said, "Who?" And he said, "Anna Kriégel." It's just very bizarre and dark.
How weird is it that I get that they're minors, but the identity of the criminal or of the perpetrators has been protected,
Right.
and not Anna's.
No, Boy B said that when they were all three together in the park, he was lagging behind Boy A and Anna on the way to the farmhouse. And once they got to the house, Boy A turned to him and told him to leave. And Boy B remembers that Boy A just had like this blank expression on his face with no emotion whatsoever. But Boy B refused to leave. He just stayed into a different room for a while. But then he heard the attack and he went into the room and saw that Boy A was choking Anna with one hand and trying to disclothe her with the other. Now, a few other things happened, but the details are just pretty gruesome. And in respect to Anna, we're going to skip that part.
Okay. This is what I was kind of talking about earlier, though, is in this kid's mind, it's a 13-year-old going to school. The school all bullies Anna.
Mm-hmm.
They're all in that together pretty much. He probably saw it in his head as he was doing something heroic or something that would make him cooler at school.
I don't know. That's hard to even interpret. Like,
well, I'm just saying, like, how dangerous it is to, if you notice one particular person is always bullied and it seems like everyone's against them, like, that needs to stop. That needs to be stopped by people who observe it, because they can form this idea that this person deserves it or that this person is less than the other kids.
right.
And that it's cool to bully them.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. As I was saying, Boy B was terrified by what he saw and ran away back to his house. So that's the story they got out of him after several interviews. And you know how the police interviews are. They're long. Like, they were interrogating him. So even though Boy B didn't physically help kill Anna, he was still so much a part of it. He had this conversation with Boy A. He lured her from her home, knowing what was going to happen next. Most likely he told her that Boy A wanted to have a relationship with her. Because remember, she was so excited to leave, giving her dad that huge smile.
Yeah, they were taking advantage of someone who craved attention.
Yeah.
She started bullying herself online for attention. It's like she was vulnerable because she was so deprived of it.
So the judge on this case told Boy B that he, quote, actively and knowingly took part in this murder, even if not violently.
As knowingly as a 13-year-old can.
Boy B's parents said that he was very naive and immature and hungry for friendship, so he was taken advantage of by Boy A. Now, boy A was charged with murder and agitated sexual assault. Boy B was charged with murder. When the verdict was read off in the court, boy B turned to his mother confused,
He was
crying.
charged with murder?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about these charges because it's very...
13-year-olds.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
He was confused, crying, asking his mother, "I'm guilty." So it's hard because he's so young. Like,
I know, because what they did was so terrible, but even though he was an accomplice, he isn't the one who did it.
mm-hmm.
So, like, you wouldn't think he'd get charged with murder. Like, you'd think he'd get charged with being an accomplice.
So when they were convicted, they were both 14 years old, which is the youngest murderers in Ireland's history. And because of their ages, like we said, their identity will be protected. Usually, this is really interesting. In Ireland, if you are convicted of murder, then you serve a mandatory life sentence in prison. Like, no questions asked. Which I respect.
Yeah, that's good for adults.
But because of how young these boys are, or were, they were shown mercy from the court. So boy A was sentenced to life, but with a review after 12 years. So he would be possibly up.
It's almost like possibly a parole.
Right. Boy B was sentenced to 15 years with a review after 8 years.
Oh, okay. For a second there, it was like, what? He got longer? But,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but only 4 more years before the review for the kid who actually did this?
So what do you think about this? Because I know that the judge had a really good point that boy B did have such an active role in it.
Yeah, he was responsible, of course, for the role he played, but at the same time, he didn't commit the evil part of the crime. He assisted someone. And again, I think it goes back to that groupthink that the school had, or that particular kids in the school had, that Anna was less than them and that it was cool to bully her, because he was like, well, I want this kid to think I'm cool, so I'm going to do what he asked me to do. Because we all know that, like, when we're kids, we just want to fit in, we want to be cool, and when it's cool to bully a particular person,
right,
it complicates things. But I mean, I definitely think he should have gotten punished for what he did.
Right.
But I think the gap between the punishment should have probably been a little bigger.
Yeah. Well, it's a really interesting case. I don't know. It's really interesting. There's also a lot of different articles that I saw that were talking about how boy A was a Satanist and had all these really disturbing drawings and stuff, and that boy B participated with him. So, but I couldn't verify.
I don't care about that.
I'm just saying, like, maybe these boys had a history of violence, and, like, you know what I mean? That could have contributed to how the judge saw them.
Yeah. Ugh. It's weird. Like, everything contributes.
Yeah.
But it's just such an unnatural thing. To try to understand it is impossible. So,
So,
is that pretty much the story?
that's the story. I want to mention Anna's funeral really quick. It was full of color and sparkle. Anna's family asked friends and family not to wear the usual black, but instead colorful clothing to help celebrate Anna's short life. A Russian flag was draped on her casket, and small trinkets and knickknacks were on display to honor her, including a Russian nesting doll.
It's really sweet that, like, having a colorful funeral and celebrating her life instead of the traditional black.
Yeah. Anna's family played a slideshow of Anna's life, and with it, they had some of her favorite songs, one being This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. So, just a little way to celebrate who she was. I am going to read off a statement from Geraldine in the court, what she said. She said this about her daughter. She was wild and wonderful, electric, so full of fun, madness, and laughter. We could not believe the happiness and joy we found in our lives. She was the love of our lives, and every single night before she went to bed, she told us that she loved us too. Every night she came to kiss us, and she said, always in French, "Good night, sleep tight, have beautiful dreams, I love you." Life without Anna is no longer, nor is it even in existence. It is a misery that we must endure for the rest of our lives. We have lost our precious daughter, and every family occasion without her is entrenched with pain and sorrow. So that is Geraldine's statement about Anna.
I think that perfectly illustrates just the complexity and, overwhelming nature of something like this, because she said we have to deal with this misery for the rest of our lives. Mm-hmm. It's a miserable thing. It's a horribly sad thing. And yet they were able to see the value of having a celebration of her life at the funeral and making it less of a depressing, sad occasion and more of like, let's be grateful for the time she had. And because sometimes we hear about how we laugh at inappropriate times or something. And what I always say to that is, we're not going to stop enjoying our lives because bad things happen. No one who these things happens to wants you to be devastated for the rest of your life over these things. Like, we enjoy our lives in honor of the people who have lost theirs because we appreciate what we have after talking about these things. So, yeah, people need to enjoy their lives, need to be grateful and be happy for what they have. And it's just a very nuanced and complex set of emotions when this kind of thing happens. But I think it's really cool that how they handled the funeral.
Yeah, I do too. Nicely said. So that is our story for the week. It's kind of one of those lessons of what bullying, the effects of bullying can really do to a person, and how, if you have any whiff of it happening, to make sure that you help.
Especially if one person's targeted regularly, like, that needs to be addressed. Because it can become a stigma that influences the way the kids think, because they're young, they're dumb, they don't think about things the way an adult does. They think about things the way a kid does. And that is pretty much what led to this, I would imagine, is because, well, I've talked about it enough. But anyway, thank you, Rosie.
You're welcome.
You did a good job on this one.
Thank you.
It's a case I've never heard of before. So I'm glad that we're able to share it on here.
Cool. Thank you. We decided to try going global tonight.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. We appreciate you. Thank you again to all our patrons for helping us to keep doing this. And just another quick reminder that we did put out our Patreon episode last night.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I also want to take a minute to talk about this new app called Wisdom. We are going to be doing a live chat that's about 20 minutes or so. Any of you guys can come and say hi to us. It'll be like a little audio meet and greet. And maybe if you guys have any questions, it'd be fun to do like a little answer. What's the word I'm looking for?
Q&A?
Q&A, yeah. So I just got the app and made the profile for our show. So you can find us under capital V, lowercase o, capital V, lowercase podcast. Okay?
Nice.
We're planning on going live on the 9th. So that would be next Thursday, the 9th of December at 5 p.m. Central Time.
Yep, Central Standard Time, U.S.
So get the app now. Follow our username. That's capital V, lowercase o, capital V, lowercase podcast. And then you'll get notified when we go live. So an extra reminder, and you can come hang out with us.
Cool.
We'll put the link to our Wisdom profile in the show notes of this episode as well. And maybe we can remind you next week.
Yes, we will remind you next week. Yeah. Sweet. Well, we hope to see you over there and be able to chat with you in real time.
Can't wait to hear from you guys. That'll be really fun.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.